The promise of God is not supposed to be idolized. Only God is supposed to be idolized. The blessings God gives you, including the promises, are not supposed to be idolized, obsessed with. And many people are idolizing the promises of God over God. So what does God do to get that idol out of the heart, the idol of the promised land? He delays the victory. And the delaying becomes the refining fire that brings humility, that brings true death to self, death to ego. Because when we're talking about the promises of God, when we're talking about callings and everything, there's always success attached to that. And one of the biggest things that most people want in life, the carnal way, not the spiritual way, is for people to be impressed with them, to look at them, wow, you're so spiritual, wow. Put them on a pedestal. Most people want to be put on a pedestal. But God wants us to desire to step down from the pedestal and go low and put God on the pedestal. So many people, they're literally not content with life, even though their life is so good. The biggest part of the promised land is having intimacy and relationship with God, peace, joy, contentment, and the inheritance of God of abundant life. Many times you're in the promised land already, but you think you're in the waiting room. You're seeing only the promised land as the promise. You see how that's idolizing. You want the promise more than you want intimacy with Jesus. You want the promise more than appreciating the blessings that God's giving you. The other promises are the icing on the cake. Many people's promised land is just to have a good night's sleep. And you're having a good night's sleep. It's just to have one pure-hearted good friend, and you have that. And so many people are missing what they already have, not grateful, longing for the promise and making it an idol. Because what they're really longing for in the promise is success, validation, money sometimes, and getting approval from people, applause from people. God has taught me that it's actually not good to be longing for the promise. It's better to be content and excited for the promise, but not desperate for the promise. When we're longing for the promise, desperate for the promise, it's usually having to do with, I want the promise. But remember, the promise is not about you. The promise is all for God's glory. When the promise comes, you're supposed to be rejoicing over what God is doing now, not what you get from it. That's what you're supposed to be so excited about when the promise comes. Not, finally, I can have my success. Not, yes, vindication now, finally. Many people are obsessed with getting that vindication. Once again, that's making it about you. So God will delay the victory for a purpose sometimes. So it's important for you to understand that just because you're not seeing the victory right now doesn't mean it's not yours and it's coming. It's not time for you to start doubting. It's coming. It's delayed for a purpose. Sometimes we ourselves are delaying it, like the Israelites in the wilderness. They were the ones making it be delayed. But other times, it's just part of God's plan. He knows you need this amount of time of refining fire, of wilderness process time for your heart to not be idolizing the promise, for your heart to be refined into my character to be able to handle the promise.